Um,
they're all playing the same patches for the most part, right? And so it's like, well, yeah, Azir was good in domestic play and wasn't good at World. Not as big of an issue as like, oh, Azir wasn't playable in the LEC for the entire time, and then we go to Worlds and it's like, no, Azir's in the game again. That would be a very big issue, right? So if you get really substantial domestic play differences, that's a huge concern, right? Again, Team A literally can't practice a champion that's viable everywhere else in the world because of weird tournament, champion architecture rules, right? I know it's kind of near the bottom, but that could be a really big issue with something as severe as literally this champion's not allowed or legal in your region. And then also just the format should be understandable for people watching the game, right? This is kind of easy. It actually wasn't even written down in most of my notes, but it was always in the back of my head of like, this needs to be digestible. Otherwise, it's not going to fly because players need to be able to understand, like regular viewer players need to be able to understand what's going on here. All right, so then what happened? Well, talked with a bunch of people, came with a bunch of pitches. Right, again, there was a lot of brainstorming, a lot of other people, and so these were the pitches I actually delivered to esports. There were others that I didn't deliver to esports. They will be later on in the video. But from worst to best, the things that I actually pitched as options that we could take that would ladder back up to we probably get more game to game variety, we probably get more series to series variety, and because of those, we probably don't have to pro jail champs as much because the fact that Varus is good in lane isn't going to be as important potentially, right? So, all right. We could change the timers in the draft. We could slow down the pick phases. We could shorten the ban phases. Basically, if you have no time to think during your bans, you're just going to ban whatever's meta, and they're probably going to be bad bans, right? You're probably going to ban things your opponents were going to play because you don't have time to think about what the best bans are. So you kind of just sort of sheepishly banned the meta champions on average, right? If you get 5 seconds to choose your ban, it's just like whatever, dude. Like here's the popular mid laner, and that means that that time is then spent on picks. If you have twice as long to pick your champion, you're like, well, actually, I've got a lot more time to think about what else might be viable here. And actually, you know what? And based on what I see, this is a Gangplank angle. And I think we can actually pull out Gangplank here. And even though I wouldn't have thought of Gangplank in 60 seconds, I might think of it in 90 seconds. And so, right, I think more time kind of only leaves room for thinking longer and harder and getting other ideas here. And so, some extra variety comes out of that. Comp's gonna be slightly more powerful on average because you're gonna have a more considered team comp. The bans will be less well targeted, so the overall power of your comp is gonna be higher. The bans will be boring, yes. Drafts can be faster if you speed the bans up by enough and don't slow down picks by enough, which is a very, very late positive, not a huge one. It's not really that big of a deal, right? It wasn't a primary goal of the format, but this will probably have some small improvement in terms of how the game plays out and how the drafts play out. Okay, go one step up. What if we just increase the number of bans in the game? And of course, like you can merge these, right? You can speed up the ban phases and increase the number of bans. That's fine. These aren't mutually exclusive, but in terms of like what I think would actually do to the game, I sort of ranked them. So okay, what if we just threw more bans out in phase one? There's 4, there's 5, there's whatever, right? Well, more popular champions are forced out. Of course, it means we have more 100% presence champions because we just have more actions to take during champ select. We can force more champions out, which means that if we cut off the top of the pyramid, there's a bit more A tier, B tier, whatever. I guess Z minus tier. Sorry, that's going to be available there because the Z triple plus tier is gone. So hey, there's other options here, right? You likely get an increase in overall variety because more of the cream of the crop is gone, and so the rest of it's likely more varied. That's primarily the push here, right? However, it means the metagame's gonna develop more slowly. Right, because if LeBlanc is always banned because there's always room to develop, there's always room to ban LeBlanc without really hurting your team drafting strategy. Well, no one's going to ever bother learning LeBlanc counter. It'll just remain banned forever, and the ban pool gets really, really stagnant. And so we will preserve a bunch of 100%. The cost to ban them is very, very low. And so they'll just remain bans. And again, we won't get that metagame development. And it's very, very unlikely that someone goes like, oh yeah, I thought about this for a long time, and my 7th best AD carry is actually better than Callista Varus, I've thought. It's like, that's just very unlikely, right? So we don't get much evolution, but at least we would see some more variety on the service. Okay, well, what if we lower the bans? And yes, I have literally more bans and fewer bans as both things that might make the game better. And the reason for is the exact opposite kind of reasons, right? Okay, well, there will be fewer 100% presence champions. Long tail, we will probably have more metagame adaptation because if you have to play against LeBlanc, you have to play against Cassandra, you have to play against Azir every game, well, you'll probably start to try harder and harder to find what else might beat this champion. What else can I bring out here? Because you got to play against Azir. Half of all games you play, every blue team always first picks Azir. When you start getting really, really good at the counter matchups and you start finding ways to build a comp around those, because they also aren't going to ban your counter, and so you're going to be able to reliably play your favorite matchup and build your comp around that. And I would expect that to eventually shift the metagame forward, eventually long term. But we're also going to see a lot more handshake matchups. Where it's like, well, we can't ban everything, so it's always Skarner versus Maokai or Skarner versus Sejuani or whatever. And it's going to be a lot of Cassandra versus Rumble, and it's going to be a lot of Azir versus whatever, and it's going to be a lot. And it's like that will happen quite a bit until teams are able to finally churn through and find their update. Again, don't super love it, but it was one of the pitches that would at least, things would change some, right? Okay, different plan here. Okay, what if we front-loaded all of Blue's bans? They have to do all 3 of their bans to start, and then Red gets 3 bans. And so it's still 6 bans, but by front-loading it, well, one, we actually reduce the Blue-Red power gap. Again, not an explicit goal, but hey, it's kind of nice if it happens. And it means that the Red team now has a lot of control to make novel game states. All right, well, your bans come out, and it's like, you know what, actually? Yeah, I know Blue team gets first pick, but we're going to ban all the tank junglers now because, the mid lane pool set up in a spate where, like, either you blind pick and we counter pick you on 1-2, or we blind on 3 with, ban coverage. And what we want to blind on 3 is going to be really good without tank junglers in the game. It's going to be really bad at killing tank junglers. It's going to be good for us or whatever. Or we're going to get rid of all, now that we see all this, it's like we're going to get rid of all the lane bullies in AD carry, and we're just going to go for a silver comp. And we're going to press R and win. And it allows the red team to be like, okay, well, we've got 90 seconds now to go for 3 bans, and we're going to curate the pool of champions such that we're going to create a slightly different situation here. And because red team will switch sides during a series, because red team's going to switch which team it is in different series, right? It means that whatever one team's read on what's interesting and what's going to be unique and cool for them, what landscape's going to be best for them, they can kind of manicure that, they can kind of curate that, right? And so I was like, I think there's actually some viability here because you can really heavily now target ban a player or a role as red team. You can now start pocket picking, right? You can start to do kind of interesting things here. Because you can create, the role in a certain way or whatever. So, there's actually some validity here from a lot of lenses that I think there's some real value in having red team ban later. Okay, what if we increase the bans, but we wait until phase 2? So this doesn't do anything necessarily very special for blue versus red, but it says, well, if we're going to increase bans, what if we increase those bans late? And what that's going to do is say, well, whatever last 2 roles are left, if you throw a bunch more bans at those roles, you're suddenly just ballooning the variety there, right? Okay, well, we both picked a mid laner, both picked a top laner, both picked a jungler. Well, there's AD carry and support left. Okay, well, if you have 6 bans each or whatever, you are going to get rid of 12 AD carries and supports. Better know a lot of champions, and 6 each probably too many, right? But it's like, suddenly whatever roles are left for last, those players need a very large champion pool, potentially, or, a slightly larger champion pool. It kind of depends. Maybe you can curate good matchups. Maybe, there's a bunch of pocket picks that can fill out team comps. Maybe, that your AD carry has a lot of unique champions they know how to play. Maybe your mid laner has a lot of unique champions they know how to play, and so you reliably leave your mid laner for last and ban out whoever they leave for bottom 2. And it's like, well, other teams have different identities because this plays a big champion pool. We can always leave him for 4 or 5. And so, yes, of course, most players need to know more champions. And because they need to know more champions, they're now practiced and ready to go, right? Anything that basically forces you to need more champions in your pool means, by definition, they are then ready. Even if you were to revert your draft format, well, they've practiced their Kai'Sa games, they're ready to go on that one or something. And so I think you would get some more movement there. And of course, again, you still increase your 100% presence champions because there's more actions taken in champ select, and so more champions have a chance to be picked on, right, picked or banned in every single draft, but you get some movement there, right? And so I thought there was, some real validity here of forcing a few players' champion pools to be really stretched and see what comes out of that one. Okay, what if we did a slightly better version of that and reshaped bans in a different way? We actually try to get both situations here. We actually have fewer bans at the very start so that you've got to learn your Azir counters or whatever's the best champion in the game, which I think would long-term drive metagame adaptation. But the bans are still focused late into the draft. And so you can basically now do 2 things here. You can prio what's the best champ, or what player just doesn't have a pool right now and we need to give them draft resources by letting them first pick something with few bans so their best champ is still up. Which of our players can weather a lot of bans, which of our players can have a big counter pick pool, and you likely get not only the long tail meta shifts from the constant first picks that aren't bannable, so you now must learn a counter before the second ban phase comes around, and you still get your, guys of the champ ocean can do something kind of interesting here. So I thought it was going to be a relatively interesting way to, again, drive back to the goals of we'll see more game-to-game variety, more match-to-match variety, because you just simply will have wildly different drafts where, no, in this draft we had 12 AD carry bans, in this draft we had one, and they picked Zeri versus Kalista right away. And so you get really substantial game-to-game and match-to-match variety, which is a pretty big positive. Generally speaking, players going to know their champions. I think this is a reasonable pitch. And then this finally moved to the basic umbrella of what if we just simply removed champions from availability, which again are functionally bans, but what if we took it some level out of the player's hands? How can we remove champs from availability? Because that's basically, it's like there's two lenses of thinking, right? You can either try to force people to play unpopular things, which I think is very difficult to do, right? How do you say, go pick Shaco, it's worth it? On the Riot side, we can just buff champions, right? But doing it programmatically, doing it automatically is kind of weird. How would you like, oh, this champ hasn't been picked yet this tournament, so its attack damage growth goes up? Like, that's very weird, and says, oh, no, wait to pick that Shaco. If you wait till semis, he has more attack damage. That's weird. And then once you pick him, he's bad again. Like, I don't, right? There's weird stuff there to actually raise up unconsidered champions that starts to get kind of weird. And you could try to do it with game rules, you can try to do it with draft rules, but bringing up the bottom seems kind of weird. I couldn't come up with a good version of that realistically, but bringing down the top is more reasonable. And again, on the Riot side, we can just nerf champions, but what if we just remove them from availability in some ways? Again, you can just simply increase the number of bans, which is what a lot of those other patches, those other pitches were, of like, what if we just banned more champions? Then the top end typically is going to go away, and there's going to be more space. Okay, that's a real possibility. So Riot can come in and do it, which is a little scary because, I mean, certainly, again, we can already do this by nerfing things, and we already do that, but I guess we could be like, actually, this tournament, Azir isn't pickable. Or like, once you go to quarterfinals, Azir isn't pickable. I guess that seems kind of weird, but I suppose. You could make it automated, right? You could say, hey, through some mechanism, if Azir is picked enough, Azir is disabled. Okay, well, it's the end of group stage, and as long as Azir isn't picked 3 more times, Azir won't be disabled. So you're a big Azir team, you want Azir on for the quarterfinals, so you're not going to pick Azir in last group stage games because you want to make sure, hopefully, fingers crossed, that Azir's not gone. And then there's another team who's playing a worthless game in their group stage. I'm thinking of like Old Worlds back when I was casting, where you'd have like, I'm already 5-0, I'm getting through no matter what. You're like, oh, I can try to keep Corki out of Chovy's hands. We're going to play Corki all of our rest of our games. To try, right? It's like you get strange meta applications here, which are kind of rough, right? You can start hate drafting your opponents in games that they're not even in. That gets funky. That gets kind of weird. I don't love that either. So, that's not great as like a meta optimization. You could have teams select it. There's actually a pitch, it'll be later on, where like teams could actually say, we want these 10 champions to be enabled in the tournament, and every team does that. And then at the end, you put them all together and say, well, these 140 champions are going to be viable and available for Worlds. Nobody picks Azir. Azir's not available for Worlds because no one wanted it enough. That would be a way to remove some champs from the pool. The problem is, I think you would remove a lot of champions that would have been unique, interesting picks out of nowhere, and you have a chance of also having like a 20 champion pool somehow. And again, you still have to be fair, right? All these considerations have room for abuse and weirdness that maybe is okay, but can be certainly very concerning if you got into this weird solved state where there was this like really big metagame stuff. But it still kind of came down to like, well, if we can do it in a good way, removing champions from availability is a way to then say, well, they're gone, so pick what's next. So here's an unpresented pitch. I did not get this to esports because I thought about it and was like, this is just Fearless but worse. So every team could pick 10 champions. Before the tournament starts, they put them on a piece of paper and they give it to the esports organizers, right? They all go into a pool, and then only that pool of champions can be drafted for the entire tournament. So it might be 70 champions, it might be 130 champions, who knows? And so some teams are like, we picked, Tarek and Ziggs. I know Ziggs is actually popular now, but when I was doing this, he wasn't. We've made sure that Kindred is enabled here. only 2 teams put in tank junglers. There's not a lot of tank junglers here. We actually think Rammus is going to be viable. And hey, here's this champ that like, T1 wins a game because INTZ was like, Galio, we think Galio should be in this tournament, and no one else put it in, and T1's like, Galio's the perfect pick here. Thanks, INTZ. You saved their Game 5 draft. Like, there's some interesting stories there, right? But again, there's a lot of risks around, like, well, what if no one submits any AD carries? And you come to Worlds and you're like, there's only Callista. Otherwise, you're playing, like, Syndra and Vladimir. Yeah, you could be like, you have to pick 2 champions per, like, official class. So pick your 2 favorite tanks and your 2 favorite enchanters and your 2 favorite mages. And there's just so much weird here that I'm like, I don't see this being positive. And we still don't get the upside of, like, oh, the sweet Game 5 Jace pick that no one saw coming. And to be honest, neither did they 3 months ago when they submitted the champions. But they've been playing solo queue, and they're like, actually, Jace is so good in this meta. Oh, sorry, we didn't think of him back in August. Right? You don't get the room for, like, the sweet late game option here. So it's like, no, this is not good. I'm not going to, this is just not good. This is just simply not good. Another unpresented pitch, although I think there is some more viability here, but it has metagame factors. This is basically Fearless with best of 1, where at some interval, you remove some number of champions based on what teams have done. Again, it can be metagameable, but it's like, after every team plays 1 game, right? So, you're playing LEC, you play your first 5 matches, you play your 5 BO1s, and the, 5 most present champions are cut. And then you play your next 5 matches against your new opponents, and the next 5 champions are cut, and that's gone. And then it resets every patch. So it depends how many games you play on a patch, how many unique matches you play on a patch, but it would be a way to replicate things similar to Fearless while still playing best of 1. I think this was, reasonably viable. I think this could have been an option. And I mean, you could also do this in best of 3 itself, right? Play best of 3, and then like after you play your, week 1 match, you go to your week 2 match, and 15 champs are gone. All right, well, here's your week 2 match. 15 champs are gone. Go. Individual leagues could tune how many champs they disabled per week if they wanted to push people farther down or farther above, whatever. But again, still issues around metagaming, being like, okay, well, we're playing against this team next week, and I'm just going to hope that, we're just going to pick or ban this champ that we know we care about in this other team, and we want to free up that ban. We don't want to have to ban Karthus against this team next week, so we're going to throw it into all of our bans leading up to that to raise Karthus' presence. Again, not an absolutely huge problem, but it would be a negative. Either way, still less exciting than just actual Fearless. So here's some other options that didn't get through. When you pick a champion, you have to bind it to a player. You pick Tristana, it is on my AD carry. It's not Tristana just in the draft. So we get fewer flex picks. Fewer flex picks means that champions that are flexible are less strong in pro play, which then lowers the need to tune them around pro play because you've suddenly made Jace less powerful or Rumble less powerful or whatever less powerful. It can be that champions that are flex picks in pro play get increased priority and result in having to be balanced around them. So there's, a minor positive saying you've got to actually lock in your player along with your champion when you do this. There's a version of something called Protection Draft, where before the ban phase, you say, I'm going to protect Rumble, Karthus, and Azir. Neither team can ban Rumble, Karthus, or Azir. However, I cannot pick those champions until you've had a chance to pick them. So, like, if I'm blue team and I predict Rumble, Karthus, Azir, I can't pick until blue 2-3. That red is allowed to pick those champions and be like, no, we don't want them. They're all yours if you want them. And then it's like, nice, we protected our Frog and Anivia, or, our 80, our jungler plays Kindred. You don't, we're going to protect Kindred. Our pocket pick is always left up. It's very reasonable. This helps you bring up a little bit of the bottom end. You can protect a special pick every single draft here. I don't think it gives you that much special innovation, but there's, some validity there. You can make teams blind their bans. You integrate a lot of game-to-game variants because this might be a ban phase where no one banned either mid laner, any of the mid laners, and so you get like just pure full power blind pick mid lane pool. Go. You're going to have fewer bans overall. You have the option of being very strategic here because, I'm going to ban 80 carries. Don't worry, I'm just going to be better in a game where 80 carries are gone. Or I'm just going to ban tank junglers and, we're just going to do that. And, this creates more novel game states. Again, it's not terribly exciting, but it does something. Another version is overdrafting. Draft 7 champions during your draft phase, and then at the very end, lock in the 5 you're actually going to play. So this allows you to essentially draft more 80 carries, functionally using them as bans. You can draft like a risky blind pick that might have a strong counter, and you're like, actually, they never picked the Fizz counter. all right, we'll play Fizz this game. It's going to make sense here or something. There's, again, room for some interesting stuff here. Again, you can poach champs away from the enemy champion pool. You can do something that like might have a really sharp counter and, make you afraid. Then sorting out how you're going to lock things in afterwards can be a little bit tough, but there's ways to solve that. Again, there's some interest here, but just I don't think it was going to be interesting enough to bring it as like, this is my pitch for what's going to be cool for drafting next season, this stuff. I didn't think it was going to really do all that much for what was actually going to go on. So, Fearless Draft. If you don't know, Fearless Draft is champions in a series cannot be picked more than once. So if a team picks Yone, neither team can pick Yone for the rest of the series. Now, there are, of course, many ways you can do Fearless Draft. You can disable it for one team or two. When I was doing research here, I noticed that there was a very popular mobile MOBA that did one-sided Fearless. Their tournament format was best of 7. And when Team A picked a champion, Team B could pick it later. And also, in Game 7, they reset the roster, and you could pick the champion again. One option was like, if we are worried about game quality getting lower, we could lower the number of bans. Like, hey, if we're going into Game 5 and 8 AD carries are gone, and blue team decides to ban 3 more AD carries, bringing it to 11, red team decides to ban 3 more, bringing it to 14, and then blue team picks the 15th best AD carry, are we worried about that? Maybe. It was something we discussed. It was something that was an option. We kind of had the opportunity to be like, well, we could disable for one side, we could disable for 2, we could loosen up bans, we could reset the champ pool in Game 5, we're worried about it. We could say, hey, in a best of 3, champs you picked are disabled for both teams, in best of 5 it's only disabled for 1. And so that way, Game 3 of a BO3 is 20 champs gone. Game 5 of BO5 is also 20 champs gone. If we're really worried about champ pools, we could do that. These are just options on the table as like, hey, there's permutations here. If you want them, they're there, but pretty much presented esports, this list of draft formats, basically, right? And so taking a couple steps back, right? Initial investigation was mid to late 2023. Presented to esports in around August, basically wrote a doc, here are my pitches, here's what we're trying to do, right? Do you agree with the goals? Do you agree with the anti-goals? Here are my pitches in order of preference. Fearless was number 1. And basically looking at the doc, the earliest comments from esports staff was around August of 2023. So that's when they started looking at it and giving notes and, making various updates. Like, we weren't just like, oh, we've seen it, off we go. It was like for the next month or so, making some tweaks and answering questions and whatnot and whatever else. 2024 was basically spent talking with the regional leagues themselves, like actual LCS, LEC, whatever, as opposed to just central esports where it started, right? The 2023 stuff is talking with central esports. And like, are we willing to commit to this as like a global LoL esports strategy? 2024, talking with regional leagues. This is not me doing it, right? I'm hands off now. I've delivered my pitch to esports and they did whatever they did for 2024. I don't have a ton of visibility here until the end of the year. But they talked with regional leagues, they talked with regional teams, they talked with regional players, and sentiment was really positive, ultimately. I started getting translated feedback docs from like Southeast Asia and stuff. It was like, here's what we, interviewed the Vietnamese pro teams and coaches, and like, here's what they said. And, I was like, oh, cool. I'm like reading through everyone's feedback around like what they think would happen, what they think would be good, what they think would be bad. And generally speaking, teams and players were like, yeah, this is actually pretty cool. I'd be willing to play this. This seems pretty interesting. It's going to expose the frauds. We're smart, so we're not going to be the frauds here. There was a very common sentiment that we're not the frauds. I thought it was kind of funny. No one was like, I'm the fraud. Don't do it. I mean, of course, but I thought it was very funny. And basically, once that happened, like by the end of the year, I forget if it was like before or after Worlds, but like we started having some really serious sit downs with me, the new SRT producer, and the like basically esports staff like in charge of really driving this project. And it's like, how strict do we want Fearless to be? Are we worried? And we basically had 3 Fearless pitches, right? We had the one that we actually went with, which is like double disable, no reset on the draft, nothing, just 5 bans for both teams every game, 10 champs removed every single game you play, just go. That was one of the options. I think one of them was decreased number of bans over time, and the other was reset the disables on game 5. I think those were the 3 pitches. I don't remember exactly, but I think that was true. One of them might have been only disable for one team at a time. I don't honestly remember, but I know that I was like, I really, really believe, especially because at this point we decided, oh, we know we're only doing split 1 of 2025, and like, then we should go as hard as we can, right? If we're worried about being maybe too hard, let's be hard on them. We know it's only going to be for 3 months. Let's see what happens. If it is too hard, great, we can walk back. If it's not too hard, we still don't know if this would be too hard, right? If we did something soft like a reset or whatever, like we don't know. So if this is going to be let's gain research, then we should research as hard as we can, right? And it's like, oh, it's too much. Okay, we walk back. And a quick sort of thought on like trial for 2025 and whatever is it was very important from the esports side. This is my recollection of what I was told from esports staff that This is a pretty big deal, right? And it was like, actually, it's very important that your pro players all know at least 12 champions, because game 5 is going to be on champions 9 and 10 before bans, just on disabled champions 9 and 10. And if you sign a bunch of players because you're like, their 7 champ pool is really good, and we're like, surprise, you signed all your contracts, learn 12 more champions. You're like, I didn't sign this guy because he knew 12 champions. I signed him because he's really good at 7, which is your prerogative. I'm not saying it's a smart idea, but like, esports does not want to rug pull their teams, which I think is very valid. That they're like, look, we actually want to give these teams enough forewarning that even if we were like, we really want to do this by like November 2024 or 2023, which would be a pretty fast turnaround, that's well past most free agency, and teams have mostly solved their rosters at this point. So it's like, no, like, they want to be like done basically in time for Worlds, so that like they can talk to teams during Worlds or whatever, and like make sure that when the offseason opens up, that like the pro teams know Fearless is coming. And so it's like, as much as, we were kind of getting things nailed down at the end of 2023, they're like, no, we want to basically, they're optimizing for letting pro teams know by the end of 24 so that they can sign their roster for 25, understanding that Split 1 is Fearless. So that was kind of how the time frame went this way. It meant, I'm sure there was like a lot of slow periods. I didn't really do much for a few months. I have no idea really, or again, this was not something I had a lot of information into. I have my own thing going on anyway, but eventually decided, yep, we were going to trial this for Split 1 2025. I assume we'd be willing to run this in 2026. Again, this is ultimately still an esports decision for them to make. But I have my fingers crossed. That's going to be very exciting. It's going to be very fun. That fans are going to enjoy it. That pros, I mean, it's going to make their jobs harder. Objectively, their jobs are harder. They have to know more champions. They're going to be under more pressure to perform. On champs, they know less well. I think it is still a reasonable thing to ask these players to know 14 champions to a pro level. I think that is reasonable. But I'm not them, right? So it's in for a split to trial it out. Is it good for esports viewership? Is it good for esports fans? Is it good for the esports product overall? Is it good for League of Legends, the game overall? If so, we might commit to it full time in 2026. Again, still not really my call. Again, I'm in the discussions a lot of the time, and again, I pushed for this version of Fearless Draft, but I'm not the only person who's involved in those discussions, right? And so it's not like I'm not doing this unilaterally, even if I am delivering many of the pitches here. Now, one final thing, it was bouncing around my head, and I almost forgot what it was. Oh, shoot. Oh, no, I knew I was going to say something. Now I'm blanking on what it was. Can I get back there, or am I going to forget? It was about Fearless Draft. It was about selection of stuff. It was about timelines. No, I think I lost it. Crud. Oh, well. Yeah, there's one thing I was going to say, and I can't remember what it is anymore. So, oh, well. I had one more anecdote to share, and I don't have it anymore. So I will see y'all next time. I hope you enjoy the season. I hope you enjoy your esports. No, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's something about esports. Crud. This outro is trash. This outro is my worst outro of all time because I'm trying to be like, well, but what if I just remembered what I was going to say about how Fearless Draft should work, and trying it for Split 1 and leaving it forever in 2026. And now I remember. Yes, we got there. This is around the one of the top 3 goals being, what if we have fewer pro jailed champions? And so one of the things that I was willing to entertain, not on an esports pitch side, but on the like SRT design side, on the live tuning side, is what if we chose to ignore all of our pro data and say we will never nerf anything for pro play? And ultimately, some discussion here, what it came down to was, no, we're going to maintain our current pro strategy of, if something is 100% presence for a patch, it gets a nerf. If it's above 80% for 2 patches, it gets a nerf. Now, it's a lot harder to be 100% in Fearless. When it's picked in game 1, it no longer counts in game 2 or 3. So this would be like, actually, this champ is getting red 1 ban every single game in a series. That's 100% presence. Or it's red 1 ban, pick in game 3. Like, I think it's going to be very, very unlikely, but we are still going to be like, well, look, partially to preserve the, like, what does esports look like read, we don't want to also change our pro play balance strategy in addition to also changing Fearless. And so in order to make this a more, like, slightly more robust experiment, we are not changing our pro balance strategy until measuring the results of Fearless without a change in pro balance strategy, and then be like, hey, after we did this, do we think we'd be willing to implement Fearless again? Do we think we'd be willing to change our pro balance strategy, right? Figure those out at a future point in time after this experiment is done. So at least I remember what I wanted to say. Hooray. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.
I didn't know that this got this big. This was...
They're all
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Techno Tuesday, an emergency episode of Techno Tuesday, because we need to discuss AI copyrighted images. Obviously, AI has been all over the internet the past few years, and recently the AI images and videos are getting insane. And now it's getting even crazier. So this is Midjourney, which makes all these AI images. You've probably heard of it, maybe. This is Dolly. And if you haven't heard of Sora, this is the new video generator from OpenAI. This came out, I think, a few weeks ago, and it's really, really high quality, and it's actually even worse compared to the new stuff that YouTube is putting out, which is even higher quality. So, if you somehow haven't noticed any of this stuff happening over the last few years, AI image generation is getting really, 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 really good, and AI video generation is getting crazy good, and it's gonna be insane. So you might have seen any of this and wondered, who owns this? This person made a bird on a Buddha statue. Who owns that? Like, if a person goes into Sora or Midjourney or whatever and says, make me a video with a bird on a Buddha statue, does that person get the rights? Does the AI company own it? Does the person who owned all the original, like made all the original training data own it? Does Twitch chat own it? This is actually kind of confusing. Wait, and this matters a lot. What, are people gonna start using AI stuff for like video games and books? This stuff is getting crazier and crazier. Who owns all this? Can you copyright it? That's what we're gonna answer today. And it turns out it's actually a very interesting story. We have all these legal cases that have gotten us to this point. I think you're gonna find it fascinating. Introducing my presentation that I made this morning called Can You Copyright AI Images? When you go to ChatGPT and you say, make me an image, who actually owns that? That's the question. As a reminder, when we're talking about ownership, we're talking about copyright. If you don't know what copyright is, it gives you the rights to something you made. We're mostly talking about the US here. Here are the rules for the US. It can change a little bit, but basically if you make anything, you automatically get copyright over it. You don't have to do anything. If I go make a painting in my garage right now, I get copyright of it. Now, you can go register it with the Copyright Office of the United States and make it all official, and you need to do that if you want to sue somebody. But if you just make a thing, you have the rights to it automatically. These messages you're writing right now, you have the rights to them. Congratulations, chat. You actually might not, because it's in Twitch. Twitch might have the rights. And it doesn't protect like an idea. You have to turn it into a tangible thing. But if you do that, you have a copyright, just straight up, automatically. And what's great about that is you have the rights to it. You have the rights to decide what it's used for and whether it's sold and it's reproduced and all that stuff, right? This is a fundamental thing about creativity and making stuff. You get copyrights of things that you make. So what I want to do is play a little game. We're going to play a game called Can You Copyright? I'm going to give you guys a series of scenarios, and we're going to see, can you even figure out whether a thing is copyrightable or not? Again, I just told you that if you make a thing, you can copyright it, straight up. So this should be easy, right? This should be very simple, straightforward question. Question number one, chat. You propose to your girlfriend at the beach. Congratulations. You go to the beach, and you set up this beautiful landscape in the background. You get everything ready. You're putting your phone there. You and your girlfriend are there. You're gonna sit down with the ring, and then, oh crap, somebody's dog runs over and steps on your phone, and the phone takes the picture of you and your girlfriend. Who owns the picture? Can you copyright the picture? Do I get it? I mean, it's my phone, and I set up everything. Do I get it? Chat made this stream, so chat owns it. Well, a lot of people guessed it. The dog gets it. Whoever creates something is the one who gets the copyright. It doesn't matter that I set up all the stuff. The dog made the picture. Congratulations to the dog. You now have the copyright of my wedding photo. Ooh, except dogs can't have copyright. Turns out the Copyright Office of the US says that only humans can own copyright. So I'm sorry, Chester, you don't get to have the copyright at all. Actually, nobody gets the copyright. There's a famous case for this that you quite possibly have heard of, where there was this guy named David Slater who went to Indonesia and he talked to a bunch of monkeys and he put out cameras in a way that he like wanted to get the monkeys to take cool pictures of themselves by pulling a rope or whatever. And he got a monkey to take a selfie. And it's this amazing photo, right? This incredible photo. But the monkey took the photo. And so what happened is he took this photo and he was like, this is mine. He started licensing it to stuff. And Wikipedia started using it. Like other companies started using it for things. And he was like, no, hold on. That's my monkey photo. I took that. And they went to court over it. And the Copyright Office ruled that, no, we only do copyrights for humans. You gotta be a human to copyright. The monkey took the photo. David was trying to say, look, I set it all up. I did the hard work. You know, he just took it. But like, I did so much here. And they're saying, no. It doesn't matter that you put in a lot of effort. That's the monkey's photo. And because it's the monkey's photo, it means it's not anybody's photo. Later, PETA sued him to try to say that the monkey should get ownership and not him. Like, actually, the monkey should get ownership. But again, the Copyright Office was like, no, PETA, no, humans can only have copyright. Monkeys can't have copyright. So unfortunately, this monkey did not get ownership of his photo. So this is pretty interesting, right? It establishes it's got to be a human that makes it. There's very clear precedent around that. So great job. You did great. Let's go to question number 2. Let's say you go to a fancy museum and there's a fancy dog painting in the museum. Wow. Beautiful. This was made by Public Von Dog hundreds of years ago. Ludwig von Dog has been dead for like 200 years, okay? So it's in public domain. You say, that is an incredible painting. And you've been training as a classical painter. And so you paint a perfect replica of this dog painting. Absolutely perfect. And this is like, you have been training for like a decade to be able to do this, right? You make this incredible, perfect recreation of it on paint. Can you copyright your painting? What do you think? The dog still owns it. The answer is, no. And here's why. You need to add creativity for something to be copyrighted. You can't just like put in a lot of work. That's not enough. You have to actually have creative expression and make a new thing for the US to be like, yes, you have the copyright, you own that thing. This came from a case called Bridgman Art Library versus Corel Corp. Bridgman Art Library went to a museum and there was a bunch of public domain photos, right? And they went there and took photographs of the paintings and made these like really beautiful photographs that were basically trying to perfectly replicate these like museum paintings. And then Corel Corp came along and they were like, oh, cool, some paintings. Again, the paintings are in the public domain because they're super old. They started using the photos of the public domain painting. Bridgman Art Library was like, hey, those are our pictures. We took those. And the court basically said, no, you just recreated this thing perfectly. That doesn't count. You have to add actual creativity. And a key part of this was basically the court saying, it doesn't matter that you guys went in there and you set up the lighting and you took a nice photo and you did all this stuff. That's not enough. You have to actually add original stuff. So again, they reinforce this idea of like, it's not enough to just put in a lot of work. That doesn't mean you own the copyright to a thing. You got to do more than that. Okay, so let's move on to question number 3. And this is a big one. You play Nintendogs for the Nintendo DS. And then you record funny commentary and editing for it. Wow, Puggies! You make an amazing YouTube video of you playing Nintendogs. And you have all these funny jokes and edits, and you put Subway Surfers in there, and you play the Vine Boot sound effect. Can you copyright it? So Nintendo owns Nintendogs. You made the video. Can you copyright it? Does Nintendo own your video? Okay, some people are saying it's because it's transformative. Like it's fair use. The answer is, kinda. So, you can't copyright anything that involves Nintendogs because that's not yours. What you're making is called a derivative. You're making a product that is based on another copyrighted work. You can't copyright any of the stuff that came from Nintendogs. You don't own that. Depends on how Nintendo feels that day. Kind of. But what's cool is you can copyright the parts you created. And what that means is the funny jokes that you said and the editing you did, you can copyright that portion. It just can't include Nintendogs at all. It's kind of like how we put out a video last year of my Pajama Sam playthrough, but had no Pajama Sam. That's totally legal, and I can copyright that. But you can't actually copyright all the other stuff. So if I go play Skyrim, I can copyright the expression of my Skyrim videos, but none of the actual game. And this is often considered an unpublished literary work, because without the game, there's nothing even there. But I can copyright all that stuff. Asterisk that we'll come back to later, fair use would potentially allow you to copyright this thing, but you would have to prove that, and that becomes a case-by-case sort of situation. It is very unlikely you would be able to claim fair use on a Skyrim playthrough. All right, what's everybody's score? We've done 3 questions so far. What's your score? 0 out of 3. Somebody said there's 6 out of 3. Okay, I got them all right. Make these harder. So let's go on to the next question. You list out every dog in your neighborhood. That's right. You go to all your neighbors and you knock on the door and you say, hello, I'm doing a census of dogs. I'm getting a list of every dog. And you get all the dogs in the neighborhood and you put in a big list and you give it even a nice font and you put it in alphabetical order. Can you copyright your list of dogs? And why or why not? You got all of it. You got Mr. Snuffles. You have Dr. Snuffles. You have Mr. Snuffles, MD. I'm seeing a recurring theme of dogs. No, that's totally coincidence. I think most people are actually figuring out the vibe of this one. As you could kind of expect, no, because you can't copyright facts. There's a case called Feist Publications, Inc. versus Rural Telephone Service Company. So there was Rural Telephone Service Company. They made a telephone directory. For all you youngins in here, that's a thing they used to do where they would make a book of all of the people's names and addresses and numbers, phone numbers, in a phone book. So this company, Rural Telephone Service, did this, right? They made a directory of telephone numbers. And hold on. If you don't think that's a big deal, they put it in alphabetical order. That's huge. And then Feist Publications, these fucking assholes, came along and used their phone list without permission. And so Rural Telephone Service came in there and sued them and said, whoa, that's our list of people's names and phone numbers. And the court ruled, this was like 9-0. They lost so bad. They're like, no, bro, you can't just copyright facts, okay? You can't just copyright a list of names. How? No, you can't do that. So the Supreme Court was like, no, it's got to have creative expression. And this is important. It can't just be that you did the sweat of the brow, which is something they say a lot in these court cases. You can't just sweat a lot and then you copyright a list. You got to actually have original creative expression. But isn't the style copyrighted? You're picking up on it, right? If the style had been very creative and distinct, potentially yes. But you just made a list. Even if you put it in alphabetical order. That was these guys' argument. They're like, but we put it in alphabetical order. The Supreme Court is like, no, dude, that's not creative. What are you doing? All right, question number 5. And by the way, total coincidence that there's another dog here. You take 10,000 photos of your dog, and then you code an AI program from scratch that trains on all of your dog photos and then generates new dog pictures. When your AI creates the dog photos, can you copyright the dog photos? See, now it's getting weird. You made all of the code. You designed the AI, and then the AI outputs dog photos. And let's assume this is an AI that's similar to Midjourney or ChatGPT. Same type of architecture, which is important later, but I won't go into that now. Okay, some people are saying the machine made it. The AI is not a dog. Yeah, a lot of people are upset that the AI isn't the dog. The dog is the owner. The dog owns it. A lot of people saying the AI owns the dog. Most people are picking up on what the answer is going to be. You're starting to pick up the trend here, which is no. Because the dogs didn't make the picture. You didn't make the picture. You didn't actually make the picture itself. The AI made it. So the AI owns the copyright to it. But it turns out that AIs, because they're not human, and we have all this established court cases to show that, can't get a copyright because it is not a human. It doesn't even matter if you made the algorithm. There was this interesting case from this guy named Stephen Thaler and his AI that he made called DeBus. And this one's really kind of fucking weird. This is like this British computer scientist. He made like 10,000 photographs around England or whatever of his own stuff. And then he coded an AI from scratch with his own images. And then he had the AI make images. And this is actually one of them that he tried to get copyrighted. But what was interesting is he didn't just say, okay, I want the ownership. He actually tried to get DeBus, his AI, to get the ownership. He went to the copyright courts and systems and said, yeah, my AI should own this. My AI made it. He even is crazy. He even he started messing with parts of its brain essentially to make it like hallucinate more new stuff and make it dream like nightmare type things, and basically came up with this. But he was encouraging the AI to make things in a certain way. So he went to the copyright office and he said, I think the AI should own this. Kind of like what PETA did with the monkey. And the court was like, no, it's not a human. It's not a human. It can't own copyright. And they basically said, look, right now we have these rules established. This would require fundamental changes. If we're going to start letting machines own copyright, copyright, that's like a completely different system than what we have as our current copyright system, right? And the guy doesn't own it either because the AI made it. So now this leads us to our final question, which you can probably guess at this point. The question is, if you go to ChatGPT right now, or you go to Midjourney right now, or you go to Google's AI right now, or any of the AI systems, and you ask it to make a dog picture, and even ChatGPT doesn't even have the rights to all of the images that it trained on, right? That's a whole other thing we're gonna get into. Can you copyright your shitty dog image? I made this morning on ChatGPT. Can I copyright it? And pretty much all of you are understanding it. No, I can't, because the AI made the thing, not me. And that means an AI image can't be copyrighted by anybody. It can't be copyrighted by the people who did the original training images. It can't be copyrighted by OpenAI who made it, and it can't be copyrighted by you. This is really fucking weird, right? This is strange. People are making all this stuff and nobody actually owns the rights to it. It gets even weirder because, like, you know how everybody's starting to make AI stuff and post all these images on the internet? They can't even copyright them. Nobody can own any of this stuff right now. So what I would consider the landmark case that shows this is this one called Zarya of the Dawn. So this is like the past few years this has been going on. You might have heard about this. There's this person named Christina Kashtanova who made a comic book using AI art. She made a full comic book where she wrote all the text and she set it all up, but the images all came from Midjourney. She sent it off for copyright. She said, hey, US Copyright Office, I want this officially registered as my thing. I made it. And it's successful. US Copyright Office is like, yep, cool, you got it. But then she went and bragged about it on social media. And that was a really bad idea because then everybody was like, wait, what the fuck? You copyrighted an AI generated book? That's not cool. And so they started telling the Copyright Office about it. And the Copyright Office came back and was like, no, hold on, no. And they actually revoked the copyright and they said, only the non-AI parts can be copyrighted. They did the Nintendogs thing and they said, look, the images, that's not you. You didn't do it, sorry. But everything else you got. The text and the arrangement is, you got that. So there's an important point here as we get into this. How does a system like Midjourney actually work? How does it make images? Well, the way these things work, I'm not going to get super detailed into it. This one uses stable diffusion. Various companies are using different algorithms for generating images. But the core idea is that you get an AI that's trained on a shit ton of images, millions or billions of images, usually billions. What it's doing during that training is basically learning the general patterns that humans look for when they say certain text and it's associated with certain images. The next step, after having looked at all these training things, is you start the AI generation process by giving it just a blank slate of noise, like static. Unlike what some people think, when you ask an AI to make an image of, I don't know what this is, of an orange, it doesn't start with a picture of an orange. It doesn't go look at all the other pictures of oranges that it was trained on. Instead, it starts with literally a bunch of static, and then it slowly tries to remove the static, called the noise, to get closer and closer to an orange. It doesn't even know what it's going towards. It's just like, I think if I make this a little less staticky, it'll get closer to an orange. And it does that over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Unlike what you might think, an AI image generator isn't just looking at everybody else's images and like cramming them together and stealing them. It genuinely starts with a blank slate and it goes, okay, like this type of painting, I think it kind of look like this. It does that a little bit, it removes a little bit of the static, and then it does a little bit more. And slowly this thing that starts as just like gray slowly emerges into this fully complete finalized thing. And that's how you get all of these crazy ass images. It's actually weirdly similar to how we make creative things. And you can say, oh, like it's still unethical of how it was trained or whatnot, but the training isn't that it learns to copy certain things, it learns patterns of how to create. And the reason that's important is because you are not directly controlling what it creates. Asterisk, asterisk. I'm oversimplifying things a little bit for people who really know the details of this stuff. But when you tell it, hey, make me an image of an orange, it's not going to be the same every time. They're always going to be different because it's always starting with a new canvas and it works that canvas towards an orange in a different way every time. So in this copyright case, this is critically important to how this happened. This woman made this AI generated comic book, right? And the Copyright Office again was like, look, the arrangement of the images, the text, the stuff that you did, that's on you. You got that, you can have it. It's an unpublished literary work, which is very funny because now she just she has the ownership of an unpublished work that she can't publish because she doesn't have the images. That's hilarious. So they're basically like, look, there's a clear distinction here. The parts that you did as a human, you're good, all right? You got that. You can have an unpublished work. But the images that were made by Midjourney weren't made by a human. And so she came back, the creator, and said, well, hold on. And here's where it gets kind of weird, right? She came back and said, wait a minute. I didn't just go on the internet and like Google this picture and steal it. I told the AI what I wanted. I wanted to look like this and I wanted to have this style. And then after it made the first version, I told the AI, I want these iterations. I went through hundreds or thousands of iterations until it got to the version that I liked. I basically creatively directed this thing. I put in a ton of creativity to it. Yes, Midjourney was making the images, but I was guiding it and giving it all the feedback. I put in a ton of creativity. That's kind of legit, right? It's like, okay, yeah, that's fair. That is genuine creativity. You might not like it. Maybe you say Midjourney did more, but like that is genuine work that she's putting into it. But the Copyright Office basically says, no, that's like you hired an artist. That's like you went out and you hired a person to make you art. You told them what you wanted, but the artist owns it. This is how it actually works in real life. If you go and hire an artist to make you something, they own it, not you. It doesn't matter. If you go to some artist on Twitter and say, make me furry porn art of Doug who's bald, they have the ownership. Doesn't matter if you pay them. It doesn't matter if you told them directions and then you spent hundreds of hours telling them how to make me more bald. It doesn't matter. They own it. The only case where they don't is if there's a contract written that specifies that you get the ownership. So this is really important. The actual creator of a thing, the person who goes through the fundamental creative process, they own the copyright by default. And in this case, they're saying, look, Midjourney did this, not you. Midjourney actually made the images and the painting here. Even if you guided it, it doesn't matter. And so this court case is actually fascinating. It's so good. And this actually, if you're interested at all, here's the link. This is the response from the US Copyright Office. I'm like, wow, this is really thoughtful. They really understand what is actually going on in terms of the tech of this AI. They actually list out, this is how Midjourney works. When you ask Midjourney for a prompt, it generates 4 different images and they're all different. And it's relevant here that by its own description, Midjourney does not interpret prompts as specific instructions to create a specific result. So they make an important point here. When you go to one of these image generators, it's not like Photoshop, which is a tool where when you do something in Photoshop, you get the same result every time. You're telling it, hey, I want this general thing, and then it creates the general vibe, but it's not a tool that one-to-one matches with what you want to do. So the fact that you can't recreate this image, Midjourney will never perfectly recreate that. It will be different every time. Because of that, it's not just a tool, and therefore it is actually the one being creative. The Copyright Office really dove into this and seems to genuinely understand what's going on. And so it's really fascinating. It's like if these AI systems were just copying and pasting things, this would be a little clearer, right? It's just like you're using AI, but instead the AIs are being creative enough that they actually are the creator, which is very strange. H-Rock, it's Techno Tuesday. So this is really fascinating, and it leads me to my next section called What's Up, Beijing? No, this case with the Copyright Office and Zarya of the Dawn, this was like a year ago. This is recent. I think this is the most relevant and clear example of the current standard for AI stuff, which is basically if you use AI generated things, sure, go for it, but you can only copyright the pieces you originally create. Now, maybe you guys don't care about this. I think this is fascinating. This is so fucking interesting and weird. And by the way, in this case, right, that they did, they listed all of those previous cases that I was mentioning. All that stuff we were talking about earlier of like, oh, it has to be a human. Oh, it can't just be facts. There has to be a certain amount of human involvement. All of these are building up towards this very strange new world that we're in, which is these AI systems that are like genuinely making original things all the time. So what do the AI companies think? The companies who are making these AIs and spending all this money doing it, are they trying to take ownership of it? What's their deal? What are they doing? All right, let's find out. So they're actually chill AF, FR. Chat GPT and Midjourney, they're like, hey, you own it. It's not us. Hands up. It's all you, buddy. So, for example, in the OpenAI terms of service, it says, as between, we need the fancy music. As between you and OpenAI, and to the extent permitted by applicable law, you, A, retain all ownership rights and input, and B, own all output. We hereby assign you our right, title, and interest, if any, in and to output. So they don't claim it, right? They're like, hey, it's all you. But again, that doesn't mean you have it. They're saying like, hey, to the extent of the law, you can have it. But the extent of the law doesn't let me have it. So from their perspective, they're not trying to claim anything. They're like, hey, you do whatever the fuck you want. It's not on us. They're going to make money by charging you to generate the thing, but they're not going to try to take the thing itself. And again, to be clear, they don't have the rights. When they say, hey, you can have all the rights, they're not giving you anything that they own. They don't own it. The AI owns it, which means it doesn't own it because it's not a human. So they're giving you a thing that they can't give you that you can't have. Thank you, ChatGPT. Very cool. But so, okay, we're forgetting somebody here. There's somebody in this whole equation that we haven't talked about yet. Who is it? Can anybody think of them? They're fairly important to this whole process. It's not Xi Jinping. It's what's up, Beijing? Jesus Christ. No, it's not quite. Oh, somebody said it. It's the original artists. What about the people who actually made all the art that the AI is trained on? Because yeah, actually, we haven't really talked about this yet. Turns out when you go to a ChatGPT image, ChatGPT was trained on billions of other people's images that they did not ask for permission for. So that's cool. None of the artists, gave them permission. What about them? Let's go back to my shitty bell pepper. This was created by an AI. I would argue there is genuine creative process in how the AI functions. Like on a deep technical level, that's a more philosophical argument. But objectively, the AI was trained on a whole bunch of images that it didn't own in order to be able to learn how to make dogs that are wearing bell peppers. Billions of images. And then it was able to create this. So, do the people who made all the photos and images and pictures that trained to the AI get anything? No, they don't. Sorry, artists, you're fucked. However, there's a possibility that things could change because New York Times sued OpenAI. OpenAI, who makes ChatGPT, trained ChatGPT off of a shitload of New York Times articles. And so the New York Times came in and they said, whoa, copyright infringement. You're taking all of our articles and our news that we made and you trained your AI with it, and that's not fair. Those all are copyrighted stuff. You can't just take it. They also said, and this is pretty important, that ChatGPT is actually serving as a market replacement. And I'll explain what this means in a second. They're saying, look, instead of having to go to our site, New York Times, and pay us money to read our articles that we work on, now they're just using ChatGPT to get a summary. ChatGPT can replace our work. So it's like harming our business. It's not just you took it from us without permission. It's that you're also using it to take business from us in the future. And they say, hey, you should have to pay us. You should have to do something. Rabble. We do have to take a quick break and talk about fair use. Do I have like a funny like Renaissance fair song? I thought this was a very hilarious joke that I searched for fair and put this picture in. Real quick aside, what the fuck is fair use? In general, if somebody makes a thing, they have the copyright for it. But with fair use, the idea is like, let's say you've made a cool piece of artwork. You made a painting or whatever. Let's say you made this painting. This is your painting. And I come along. Fair use could potentially let me use your stuff without permission in my copyrighted material. Now, generally, this is meant to be for education, commentary, innovation. The idea is like, I'm creating something that is particularly unique or educational, and it requires me to use some of what you made in order to make my thing. And now this is case by case. You can't just go around using anybody's stuff. You have to go like individually prove that you are allowed to do this. It depends on market replacement. It depends on like, is what I'm making going to replace your ability to sell and use this in the future? If so, that's not really fair use. The amount of it used. If I use this entire picture, do I get fair use? It's less likely. The transformation amount. Let's say I go into this and I draw googly eyes on everybody's eyeballs. I've transformed it. I've made it into a new thing, but is that enough? Maybe. There isn't a clear-cut, this is fair use or not. There's various factors that you have to consider. Some of the photos in this document are copyrighted, and I would argue I can use them for fair use because they are necessary to make a point about fair use and copyright. So again, it's a case-by-case thing that you have to sort out, and it's not some clean, easy thing where you just get to steal whatever you want. A lot of creators on the internet seem to think fair use means you can steal anything you want. Yeah, that's a good point. It's not a right. You don't have a right to fair use. This is like a legal defense that like maybe you won't get in trouble. So that's what fair use is. The idea is it protects you if you use other people's stuff in very specific cases. Now, as a reminder, what we were talking about is that New York Times sued OpenAI. And OpenAI's response, they're like, hold on, bro, is the news even copyrightable? Isn't it just facts? Remember how earlier we talked about the phone book? That's their first thing they're doing. They're like, you're just talking about the news. That's not creativity. And then New York Times came back and were like, yes, it is. We work really, really hard on our news. And then New York Times is like, but do you really? You're just saying facts. Here's the legal precedent for that. And they came back, they're like, we have so much stuff that we do. We work really hard. And then OpenAI was like, okay, show us. Prove it. So OpenAI's lawyers have asked New York Times to provide all of the documents and research and notes from all of the editors for all of their articles to prove that this is actually creative and not just facts. And New York Times has been like, we can't fucking do that. That's so much work. We're not gonna go and fucking get all of the notes from all of our articles forever. But it's kind of interesting, right? That whole thing about the phone book sets this really interesting precedent. You can't copyright facts. So is your news copyrightable? The only way it's copyrightable is if you prove that you're being really creative with it. But then that kind of goes against a lot of New York Times, which is their whole thing is like, we tell you the news like it is. Very strange thing that's going back and forth there, right? These cases are currently going on, by the way. So then the argument is if the facts aren't copyrightable, then our AI should be able to go learn all the facts and then create new facts, right? Our AI should be able to learn them. You don't get to own the facts. So it's very interesting. And the second bigger argument is this is fair use. We're transforming it. When somebody uses ChatGPT, they're not just getting a copy of a New York Times article. They're not. ChatGPT is summarizing it or giving new information or presenting it in whatever way the user asks for. And I think there's legitimate argument to this. I think both sides have legit argument here. This is currently in court. The result of this is going to be a huge factor on whether fair use can be claimed by AI companies. A lot of what people are upset about with AI art is the fact that these companies are mostly making these things from images and videos that they don't have the rights to. Not all of them, but most of them. And so the question is, what happens if they can't claim fair use? The only real argument they have is like, hey, it's fair use, right? Yeah, we are able to use all this stuff and we don't need to give you permission because we're dramatically transforming it, right? It's in the same way that if I go watch 1,000 YouTube videos and then I go make my own YouTube video, I don't owe the 1,000 YouTube videos I watched anything. That was inspiration that taught me how to be a better creator and gave me ideas for the future. As much as people like to hate on AI, it's not this cut and dry thing. The process of training these AIs is eerily similar to how we as humans learn to have new creative ideas and express them. I'm not saying it is creative. I'm saying it is weirdly close to what we as humans do. Not the same, but weirdly close. There's nuance here, and we'll get into this more later. This court case is going to be massively impactful on whether the AI companies can keep just taking everybody's data without permission. There's another court case that's pretty big. I forgot to change the thing. It's from Getty Images versus Stability AI. Getty Images, if you're not aware, they own the copyright of like tons and tons and tons of photos. That's their thing, right? Whenever you see people at the red carpet, a bunch of celebrities, it says Getty Images at the bottom right. So Getty Images has millions of photographs that they take and they license them. You have to pay to use them. And Stability AI made Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion is the, let's say, algorithm. It's the model that can create images. Midjourney, which is one of the most popular AI image generators, runs on Stable Diffusion, partially, but there's a bunch of AI companies that use this core technology. And so their image generator was absolutely trained on Getty Images. And so Getty Images says, whoa, 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 you used all your images to make your AI. That's not fair. That's copyright infringement. What's even funnier with this is Stable Diffusion will actually make original AI images that have the Getty Images watermark in them. It's not just that you took all of our stuff. It's also making images that have our watermark. Clearly, you're just recreating our stuff. So they're using that as an argument to be like, this is market replacement. You're just like outputting our stuff. So I think it's easy to kind of be like, you get them, Getty Images. Go fight for the little guy. Go fight for the artist. Yeah, the artist should get paid, all this stuff. What's funny is Getty just wants to be paid. So in their official press release, they're like, this week, Getty Images commenced legal proceedings in the High Court of Justice in London against Stability AI. They basically say, hey, you took our images and processed them, and now you're hurting content creators. And then they say, Getty Images believes artificial intelligence has the potential to stimulate creative endeavors. Additionally, Getty Images provided licenses to leading technology innovators. Stability AI did not seek any such license from us, and we believe should have pursued licensing. Getty Images is basically just like, you should pay us, which, you know, like, it's funny because it's not like Getty Images is going to go give that back to the creators. They're just going to take it for themselves probably. But Getty just straight up is like, we're doing this for the content creators, so we should get a lot of money. And it's like, okay. Stability's response, their core thing is, it's transformative. This is original. They're saying the fair use argument. They're like, look, when we make a picture of an astronaut on a horse on the moon, that's an original creation. Now, again, part of the argument of Getty Images is like, you're putting things that have our watermark in them. And then they have a genius response to this. They say, check this out. If users recreate copyrighted stuff, that's on them. That's not us. That's brilliant, right? They're just like, if somebody goes in and says, make me an image with a Getty watermark, they did that. That's on them. Because when you use one of these services, you have to sign the terms of service. And you have to say, I'm not going to recreate copyrighted things. And then if some guy goes and does that, that's on them. It's like if you upload porn to YouTube, YouTube's like, look, that's not on us. We'll do our best to take it down if you let us know, but they made that. It's not on us. This is currently in court. Who knows? it's interesting. Both sides have legit points. I think Getty is probably a little more legit in this case. The fact that the thing is making just putting Getty watermarks in the video in the images is not a good look, but who knows? Maybe they'll win. So this is another really big court case going on that is about images specifically that will probably have a major impact on whether fair use kind of becomes a big deal. So whether or not those cases play out will probably dictate whether these companies have to pay the content creators in order to use all their data to train. But regardless, data creators, you don't get copyright. Sad. Sorry. Doesn't matter if you made a bunch of paintings that some AI company took. You don't get to own it. And this gets back to the thing of the AI made the AI images. You made stuff. The AI company used your stuff to make an AI. The AI made something new. The AI made the thing, not you. It doesn't matter that you're at the beginning of the chain. You're not part of the end result. And if you say that's rigged and that's a scam, yeah, that's seriously flawed in major ways. However, you could also argue, again, if some genuine artist, a painter, goes to a museum and looks at all these incredible pieces of art and is inspired and then goes and makes new things, the paintings he looked at, those owners shouldn't own his new stuff, right? Humans all iterate creatively. That's how we work. It's not like any person who inspires anybody should get ownership of what they made. That doesn't really make sense. But we're wrapping up. So ultimately, data is really important here. This is another big topic I might talk about in the future. Even in the context of what we're talking about, of basically all these AI companies have been taking data and using it without permission, they're running out of data. A lot of what companies are trying to do right now is figure out how to make their systems better without requiring a shitload more data. That could include synthetic data, meaning that they use AIs to make stuff to train their AIs, which gets into a weird cycle and has various concerns. Or they just get smarter with training, and maybe they figure out how to make AI smarter with less data. There's theories by, for example, Andrej Karpathy, I don't know how to say his name, that the future is not going to be about getting even more data. The future is going to be about getting a really small amount of really, 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 really high quality data. His theory is that it's better to have 1,000 essays that really represent human thought and intelligence, more so than having all of Twitter. And even if Twitter has billions of instances of people being dumbasses, maybe the 1,000 paragraphs could actually teach an AI to be smarter, right? And we don't know yet. So far, more data has made things smarter. That is currently how it has worked. But we're getting to a point where the companies are running out of data. Even with these lawsuits coming, like New York Times isn't making enough data to make our AIs smarter. We've kind of like chewed through everything that we had created up until this point, and now the companies are kind of sitting around being like, what do we do now? This is also one of the reasons why YouTube is at an insane competitive advantage, in my opinion, because they have an absolutely gargantuan amount of data to work from, and every single day there's like a fucking trillion new videos that go on YouTube. So they are crazy advantage. So in summary, what we have learned today is, say it with me, chat, it is no one owns anything. With AI-generated images, the original content data creators don't own it. The AI companies don't own it. The person who prompts it doesn't own it. The AI owns it, who doesn't own it because they're not a human. All right, so that's a whole lot of stuff. I think this is fascinating. And right now, basically, they're like genuinely, the summary of all this is like, we don't know. And there's gonna be more court cases and stuff. There's gonna be lots of legal stuff happening. This is all very new, complex, strange, weird. I wanna give my quick thoughts. I think the fair use cases are gonna be massively important. Like I just said, the economics of AI is going to change a lot if, for example, OpenAI has to go pay New York Times. And I think creators should be compensated for data. Right now, the AIs are basically going around the internet and just taking all the stuff they can find, and nobody gets compensated. I do think in the future, it will be the case that, for example, I can create a YouTube video or create something original, and I can tell companies, I'm willing to give you this as training data, and in return, I should get compensation. I think that's the world we're gonna move to, and there's several other AI tech leaders who do think that. Obviously, a lot of companies don't wanna do that. They would love to stay in the world where they don't have to compensate anybody, but I do think this will be the case. And so for people who are worried about the future where AI creates all the art and artists don't have jobs, I think creating data for the AIs to train on will actually be a new source of revenue. You will be able to, if you make online art, you'll be able to make the art and sell it and do whatever you want with it, but also make additional revenue by saying, yeah, you can go train AIs on this, that's fine. And that, I think, should be your decision. The fair use cases might mean that you don't get to decide, and I'm not really a big fan of that world, but I think we're gonna move towards this, and I think that is good. You shouldn't make like a ton of money, probably, but you should make some. I don't think the AI companies should just be able to like take all your stuff with no compensation. This is a hot, spicy take that will probably change in the future. I think that the ownership should actually lie with the AI company. The AI company, like OpenAI. You have 4 parties here, right? You have the people who make the original data, then you have the company that trains an AI, and then you have the AI itself, and then you have the person who asked the AI to make a thing. Here's why I think this. It is because there is an increasing amount of human creativity and decision-making that is going into these AIs. For example, one of the main ways that you make AI smarter is with RLHF, reinforcement learning human feedback. We have human beings, tens of thousands of them, who are currently looking at data from AIs and saying, I like this, I don't like this. I like this, I don't like this. They have engineers who are going into the code of the AI and saying, we want you to act more like this. We want you to act less like this. Over on X, the Everything app, like they're trying to make their AI be a crazy edgelord dickhead. That's their creative direction. That is different from what the other companies are doing. So as we get farther into the creation of these AIs, I suspect that they will become increasingly a product of the creators rather than an objective, just God creature that knows what to do. The point here is that I believe there will be an increasing amount of influence that the creators of the AI have with the AI itself. At a point, if you have created this incredibly complex tool and it really reflects your beliefs and interests, at some point, I think you should retain some amount of ownership of that, rather than the guy who comes along and says, give me a picture of Doug with giant googly eyes. You know what I mean? This is probably the most likely opinion I have to change, but in its current state, I think either nobody should own it or the AI creator should own it. That's my thought. And you can say I'm rigged and bald, but I think that's kind of legit. But there's a lot of questions to sort out before we get there. Finally, we have to figure out at what point did a human co-create it? Let's say I go to an AI, okay? And I say, make me a funny image of a dog with a bell pepper hat. And then I spend the next 6 months talking to this AI, giving it feedback, making it go farther and farther, giving detailed notes and saying, look, I really want it to go this direction. Now we should do this. Now we should do this. Like a director of a movie would do, like a creative director at any art company would do, where you really give a lot of input and you are a major part in guiding the creative process to the end. I feel like at some point, you should be a co-creator, right? This is the same as if I hire an artist to go make me a picture of me bald and we spend a year working on it together. Should I ever get ownership of it? Should we split it? It feels strange to me that the creative director has no ownership of it. That's kind of weird to me. And again, like, just to be clear, currently, that is the standard. If I hire an artist, no matter how much I give creative feedback, they own the copyright. That is how it currently works. But that feels kind of strange to me. And I think there should be a threshold, like a level at which we say, okay, we should co-own this together. The idea that only the person who is like putting pen to paper should own anything. Say there's a team of 20 people and one of the 20 people is the one making the thing physically, but everybody is giving creative feedback. It's a whole artistic team. You're saying only the person who writes it should get ownership. That feels really weird to me. Like, it feels like it should be shared to some degree. That does not feel fair to me. We're talking about humans sharing ownership of something. I'm not saying AI. We're saying humans should share ownership of things. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Any questions? Be sure to check out next Monday on Techno Tuesday. Anyway, I think this is so interesting, dude. This is so weird. What a weird ass fucking situation the world we're in. If you have any questions, I'm happy to chat about it. We can talk a little bit more. So now Barry Bebop owns all of Doug Doug. Actually, fun fact. So Barry Bebop is my creative director. He does a lot of work on the channel. I never actually created a contract with him that says he doesn't own the rights to all the stuff he works on. So technically, he could copyright my stuff and sue me. I was supposed to do that. Normally, when you hire artists and stuff, like a company, they would write a contract that says, you're gonna work for me, I get the creative ownership of it. I'm paying you to make me a thing, but I get ownership of it. That's how you're supposed to do it. And then 3.5 years ago, I was like, shit, I gotta do that. I'll do that soon. And now it's 2025.
If I train a child on only I, who owns the child, the I or the person who generates the I?
I have an idea. Anybody have a spare baby? Let's take a baby and let's put him in a room. And then we'll take all of the 2 billion data images that Stable Diffusion uses, because it's an open data set. We can download it right now. We put them in a slideshow. And for 18 years, the baby just has to watch a slideshow of the 2 billion images, okay? And then at the end, we do a competition, baby versus Stable Diffusion. And we see do they make the same kind of art? And if the AI's art is better than the babies, that means AI is more creative. Sorry, AI wins. But we will have to sack a few babies for this.
What annoys me the most about AI is how people use it to create fake news/fact videos.
Yeah.
My mum watched a shitty AI video about some crazed Australian killer and believed it was real. Also, thoughts on Google Images being infested with awful AI images.
I think both things you just described are great examples of the immense amount of problems we are going to have because of AI. I am an AI optimist. I think our world will be better because of AI. One of the best expressions of that I've seen is this blog post by Dario Omadai, who is the CEO of Anthropic, one of the biggest AI companies. I would really recommend reading this. This is one of the more interesting articles and arguments that I have read that is basically saying, look, AI is going to have an incredibly positive impact. But he's also a realist and is like, AI is going to really potentially fuck up our world. He's notable and he's a little more trustworthy because his company, Anthropic, has put way more effort into safety, way more effort into making sure that like there are really high standards for safety and that there isn't going to be danger with what these AIs are doing. So I really like Dario, and I've listened to a bunch of the stuff he said. Whereas some of the other AI, like Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI, you don't know what the fuck he's thinking. I really like this guy. He also has an interesting background in that he did biological work, like biotech and stuff. So he's not just some tech bro. He's a biotech bro, but his background I think is really interesting. But he's very realistic. There is a lot of bad shit that is going to happen with AI. I'm not denying that at all. And it's like, how do we maximize the positives while reducing the negatives? I really want AI to solve all of our diseases. I would really like AI to fix cancer. I think that will happen in our lifetimes. And to me, I'd rather we fight towards that future rather than say, nah, there's going to be problems. Let's abandon the whole thing. There's a big difference between this and generative AI. Yes. Okay. Another disclaimer, as I will keep giving disclaimers. Generative AI, I think, is probably going to be more problematic than good. And just to be clear, when I mean generative AI, I mean like art and videos. I see way more downsides to AI art and AI videos than upsides currently. I don't know that having a tech bro being able to make a movie entirely in AI is worth the fact that there's going to be crazy amounts of deep fakes and scams and artists losing jobs and all this other stuff. I'm not like a fan of generative AI specifically. I think that AI tech broadly is going to massively improve society. And in the specific sphere of art, it's fucked and it's kind of scary. That's not to say it strictly is bad, but it definitely leans on the worst side, for sure. When I say that I'm an AI optimist, I mean AI broadly. Right now, for sure, generative AI is like not ethical in my opinion. I do not think AI companies should just be able to steal everybody's stuff and make images. All right, last donation. Let's make sure. Okay, there's don't worry.
Hey Doug, have you seen the Iron Super Monkey Ball? It's crazy.
That is not really the type of AI we're talking about.